Introduction to the Sacred Heart Twin Heroes. A mysterious voice, 2 military academy students, 2 chicken rib abilities, the chaotic era of the Republic of China, the war of resistance, will they find the answer and return to reality? Is all of this a game or a reality? Have they really existed? How do modern soldiers survive and develop in the era of war? Without avant-garde weapons and a strong physique, only a map and a dream, what should they do? They strive to create a realistic World War II environment that is cruel and brilliant. First wedge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a dense forest in southern China, the junior students of the Command Department of the Army Command Academy are undergoing a military assessment, which involves various comprehensive abilities such as physical fitness, wilderness survival, shooting, fighting, and map recognition. Divide the red and blue teams into a competition based on the class, and first find the yellow flag placed by the college headquarters to win. Class monitor Zhang Zifeng led 5 boys and 6 girls to work in pairs. He adhered to the principle of a shabby, male-female, combination and not tiring work, allowing them to combine men and women. The boys had physical advantages, while the girls were meticulous and serious. Class monitor 2, Wang Hao, leads 7 boys and 4 girls in pairs, but it's a group of boys and girls. He thinks that men and women are not compatible. In this wilderness, deep in the forest, there are many bad things that happen. However, it has been raining here for 2 whole days, and the place where the flag was placed was originally a small highland, but it has now turned into an island in the center of the river. However, precisely at this moment, Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao led their team members to come here, and the 2 teams began to think of ways to cross the river. The climbing rope was hit by a gun and fixed on the opposite rock, so Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao climbed on 2 ropes respectively to see who would reach the isolated island in the center of the river first. Just as the 2 of them were halfway up, a loud rumbling sound came from a distance, and a female soldier shouted, "Look! Floods!" In the distance, a small flood surged along the river, although it did not wash away everything, but enough to wash away Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao who were crossing the river. Class monitor. Come back quickly. The students on the shore shouted frantically at the 2 people. Zhang Zifeng discovered everything and said, "Wang Hao. Hurry up, the flood is here. Go back." Wang Hao said, "If you want to go back, you go back. I must win." There was no time to speak again. The flood came in the blink of an eye. Zhang Zifeng's legs clamped the rope tightly, and his arms were also twisted into fried dough twists. The flood was not big, as long as it was over the waves, it would be okay. As a result, Wang Hao couldn't hold on firmly due to his eagerness to move forward, and was washed away by the flood. Zhang Zifeng saw, Wang Hao and then released his entangled legs, gripping Wang Hao with his legs. With only his hands, Zhang Zifeng grabbed the rope, and with Wang Hao, the 2 of them were in danger in the turbulent river. Class monitor. Class monitor. Finally, Zhang Zifeng let go of his hand and disappeared into the flood with Wang Hao, a voice, heavy and cold. "Why are you attending military academy?" Zhang Zifeng vaguely heard someone ask him, so he answered vaguely, "Defend the motherland, defend the people." Wang Hao was stunned and said, "Same as before." The voice rang out again, "Are you willing to go to war?" Zhang Zifeng curled his lips and said, "Being a soldier is just for the sake of war. Without war, what do you want soldiers to do?" A mysterious voice said, "What about you? Do you also think so?" Wang Hao said in a daze, "I don't know, I just like this military uniform. Commanding 1,000 soldiers and horses is my ideal." Mysterious voice. "That is to say, neither of you understands the true meaning of being a soldier. Alright, let me give you a chance to understand the meaning of being a soldier and the meaning of being a soldier. Let's just treat this as a game. If you both die at the same time, the game will end. I will send you back. If you answer my question after you come back, the relationship between soldiers and war, I will give you a chance. A gift. Zhang Zifeng opened his eyes, it was pitch black, and in the mysterious voice, there was a spot of light that flickered and flickered. What does it mean? Zhang Zifeng was unclear, and Wang Hao was still in chaos. Since it's a game, I'll give you a little gift, said the shining light, emitting a sound. Two white lights rushed into the heads of Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao. A sharp pain erupted, and the two of them fainted again. This map is a gift from me to you. It can become the activity of everyone within 100 miles of the place you want to know, whether it's enemies or friends, it's clear. You can figure out how to use it yourself, Zhang Zifeng said in his mind. In Wang Hao's mind, he said, dreams. Dreams. Dreams in the distance. You can control someone's dreams. This is your gift. Now. Go find the answer. You can choose to commit suicide at the same time. I can immediately send you back to your world, but you will always be lost, unable to know the meaning of soldiers, and more importantly, lose an opportunity to achieve your ideals in the most real dream. The mysterious voice. Zhang Zifeng said, what do you mean? Where are you going to take us, or do you want us to dream? Mysterious voice. I want to send you back to the past, back to the days of gunfire, but remember. This is a dream, not a dream. You can't change anything. Be yourself. Go. Come back and give me the answer. Zhang Zifeng felt a huge suction, attracting himself. At a critical moment, Zhang Zifeng spoke up, who are you? Who are you? Mysterious voice. When you come back, exchange your answers for mine. Wang Hao said in a daze, I rely on. Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao woke up at the same time by saying, I'll go, or I'll go. Hey. Chinese, can't you help but fight like this? Get up and fight. A foreigner came into view. Zhang Zifeng's chaotic mind recognized that the military uniform on this foreigner's body was Nazi. Looking up, Wang Hao also got up in a daze and was about to ask Zhang Zifeng, what exactly happened. Shush. An urgent whistle sounded, and an officer in riding boots came here, speaking German. What are you all doing? Get back to your dormitory, everyone. Then he looked at Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao with a cold face and said, Cold Feng. Gung Liang, can you two still move? What? Although Zhang Zifeng didn't know when he changed his name, the officer's face was almost pressed against his own. He could see his teeth and knew he was talking to him. He quickly replied, I can move. If you can move, immediately get back to my dormitory. The officer's face finally left his own. Zhang Zifeng breathed a sigh of relief. The officer's face was so murderous. Surprisingly, it made me tremble a little. Immediately, a few Chinese-speaking people wearing Nazi military uniforms gathered around and helped Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao up. Is it okay, UU reading www.uukangshu. Net Captain and Deputy Captain Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao were a bit puzzled as they listened to the names of the people around them. Captain and Deputy Captain. What does that mean? Wang Hao clearly wasn't clear-headed yet. Who is the captain? Who is the deputy captain? Where am I, who are you, and how are you wearing Nazi clothes? Ha! What's wrong with Vice Captain Gung? Is it difficult for him to lose his memory? One student was puzzled, while the other student waved his hand and said, no, it's not possible. Maybe the big white bear just blinded Vice Captain Gung, and he hasn't regained his senses yet. The elbow strike just now was too powerful, which is why the captain and vice captain can resist. If it were us, we would probably have gone to see the founding father completely. Vice Captain Gung, wake up quickly. It's the 24th year of the Republic of China, and we're at the Berlin Military Academy. You and Captain Lang are the leaders of the trainees who were personally appointed by the Commander-in-Chief of the Teaching Corps and the Minister of Education. You two are our backbone, don't scare us. A short student tightly grabbed Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao's clothes. Don't say so much, quickly help the person into the dormitory, urged a slightly older student. The two people lying in bed, their eyes dull, their limbs useless, their intelligence almost paralyzed, their bodies almost useless, for no other reason, completely unable to accept the current reality. Zhang Zifeng, also known as Ling Feng here, said, "Wang Hao. Have we really arrived in 1935? Didn't we both fall into the river?" Then his expression collapsed and he said, "Why are we here? Oh my God! What kind of trouble is this?" Wang Hao, on the other hand, was even more devastated than Zhang Zifeng, because since he fell into the river, until the mysterious person brought them over, his thinking has always been chaotic, let alone understanding what exactly happened. Chapter 2. Special Forces, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a long night of conversation, Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao finally understood what had happened. They changed their confusion and despair and became lively, wild and eager to try. Ling Feng, Zhang Zifeng, said, "Then it's time to change your tune. I'll call you Gung Liang." Gung Liang, Wang Hao, replied, "Understood, role-playing. I've played it before, Ling Feng. Since this is a game and we can control the time to go back, why are we hesitating? Let's let go and start a big fight. I have longed to go to the battlefield, and it is the war that I most hope to participate in. I must kill all the little devils." Cold Feng sneered and bloodthirsty, without any killing power. Gung Liang said, "That's right, and where are we now?" "In Germany. The Berlin Military Academy." "What does it mean?" "It means that we are all students of the Huanpu Military Academy, the first batch of students since the resumption of enrollment at the Berlin Military Academy in 1935. When we return to our country, we will definitely at least hold the rank of captain." Platoon leader. Ling Feng said, "A company commander is not enough. If you want to command 1,000 troops and horses, you have to be a general. Think about the Battle of Taiyuan. A battle of millions of people, a company commander. TSK, it's not our goal." Gung Lianbai glanced at Ling Feng and said, "Nonsense. Of course I know, and besides, it's already 1935, and there are still 2 years left until 1937. 2 years. Zhang Zifeng, we don't have time anymore." Ling Feng lowered his head and said, "That's right, we'll be studying here for a year, or even longer. As we live overseas, we naturally can't handle it domestically, let alone make any preparations. So, what should we do?" Gung Liang lowered his head and pondered, "Do you remember that mysterious voice that gave us a gift?" Ling Feng. "Of course, otherwise, without bugs, this game wouldn't be fun, would it?" Gung Liang looked at the sky about to dawn and said, "What if? Through dreams, we tell someone to assign us more important positions?" Ling Feng looked at Gung Liang with disdain and said, "Young Master Wang, perhaps you don't know what period the Republic of China was. This period was a peak of anti-feudalism and anti-superstition. Materialism was mainstream in China, so why did you make people easily give you important positions? A just graduated student from a military academy. By dreaming. Oh, yes, just dreaming." A pile of crows appeared above Gung Liang's head, and he quietly glanced at Ling Feng with a teasing expression, wondering if he could succeed. "Hee, let's make you my first experimental subject." Ling Feng went inside without knowing, and when he touched his pocket, he found a piece of cowhide paper that had been folded into 4. When he opened it, there was nothing, and when he opened it, it was only half the size of a table. "Is this what? A map? But how do we use it?" Cold Feng looked unattainable. Gung Liang shrugged and said, "I didn't know how to use what I gave you." Cold Feng pondered for a while, then tentatively thought, "Berlin, Military Academy, map. Wow. Look." Gung Liang first noticed that on this seemingly lifeless yellow craft paper, a map of the Berlin Military Academy slowly appeared, with various buildings, roads, and footprints on them constantly moving and changing. There are 2 5-pointed stars here, Cold Fong noticed in the upper right corner of the map. This should be. Hey! Shouldn't this be the dormitory building? As soon as Cold Feng's finger touched the dormitory building, the map of the dormitory building covered the entire piece of craft paper, and everyone's movement trajectory in each room on each floor of the dormitory building was visible. I know now, these 2 pentagrams represent the 2 of us. But how can these footprints be distinguished? We didn't learn to trace. Gung Liang scratched his scalp. Leng Feng didn't know either. After touching one of the fixed footprints with his hand again, he brushed. The footprints enlarged, and a picture flashed in his mind of a student struggling in the toilet. Pu Leng Feng. Surprisingly, he was using the restroom. He came to his senses and found that Wang Hao was staring at the map, which actually showed the owner's name, nationality, and level of friendliness with him. Wow, Leng Feng, you're much more advanced than me. You're like a handheld map with Wikipedia. Wow. Gung Liang was drooling. Leng Feng. Can you use it? Gung Liang listened and reached out to another footprint that was walking back and forth. He found that it was not very useful, so he shook his head in frustration and said, but it's not egg. Leng Feng bit his lips and thought for a moment, how do I feel? We seem to have been tricked. Although there are 2 bugs, there seems to be no substantial help. It's better to have a treasure chest and take out any gun you want. Gung Liangbai glanced at Leng Feng and said, Big brother, no matter how much you cheat while playing Call of Duty, you won't be able to get a buy bar, right? It's better to have it than not. Besides, the cheats are too big and it's boring to play, isn't it? Leng Feng rubbed his hands and said, You're right, you're right. Since you're playing, let's start from now on. Gung Liang asked in a daze, why? Leng Feng chuckled and said, didn't we not have dinner? Just use this map, let's go to the cafeteria and steal some food. Gung Liang clapped his hands and said, walking. In Germany, especially at the Berlin Military Academy, the management is very strict, including the timing of meals, being outdated and not waiting for meals. Then go hungry. With this handheld map, Leng Feng and Gung Liang easily avoided all the patrol soldiers, arrived at the kitchen smoothly, and quickly sneaked back to the dormitory after frantically grabbing. This map is really useful. Eat quickly, rest after breakfast, and it will be dawn in 3 hours. We still have to train tomorrow. Cold Feng stuffed cold beef and potatoes into his mouth as he opened a box of canned fish. Gung Liang also stuffed a mouthful of bread and ham, hastily pouring hot water for himself, but he thought to himself, your map has been proven to be effective. I don't know if my dream works now. After eating and drinking enough, the 2 of them went to bed. Leng Feng quickly started snoring, while Gung Liang did not. He carefully studied how to use this skill to construct dreams. Originally, Gung Liang wanted to have a big shot directly and entrusted it to Chiang Kai-shek in his dream. However, he found that his head had no signal and was of no use. He had to aim at Leng Feng and said, huh. Is this feeling connected to his dream? Gung Liang felt a tremendous connecting force. Everything has its first time, give it a try. Gung Liang began his first dream construction in the Republic of China. On the other side of Leng Feng, his eyebrows furrowed tightly, and his eyes kept turning under his tightly closed eyelids. Quick! Quick! No matter how fast. Zhang Zifeng and Wang Hao arrived at the riverbank at the same time, preparing ropes and wanting to cross the river. However, Zhang Zifeng remembered that at this moment, the flood was coming, but it did not come. So the 2 of them competed on the ropes. At the same time, Zhang Zifeng climbed onto the small island in the center of the river. Just as he was about to run, he suddenly stumbled over a stone and fell into a cave. Ah! Snake! The cave was full of snakes, and he was afraid of snakes the most. Ah! Leng Feng exclaimed and jumped up from the bed. Gung Liang was nestled in the bed, giggling. Not bad, this dream was fabricated by Gung Liang, and it really scared Zhang Zifeng awake. Gung Liang heard from his classmates that Zhang Zifeng was not afraid of anything, just injections and snakes. As expected, I woke up from my dream when I saw it today. After waking up, Leng Feng realized it was a dream, so he wiped his sweat with peace of mind and prepared to sleep again. Gung Liang had played enough and found that controlling the dream was so tiring. A short dream of just over 10 minutes made Gung Liang feel as tired as reading a book, so he let go of his mind and fell asleep. The sharp whistle sounded, and Leng Feng and Gung Liang bounced up from the bed with a quick swipe. They both said, "Urgently gather," and then began to dress. When they saw the Nazi uniform, they were both stunned and responded with a bitter smile. "Put on your clothes, let's gather." Leng Feng lowered his eyes and put on his clothes. Gung Liang remained silent, obviously not sleeping well yesterday. The 3-year life in the military academy was not for nothing. They only spent 5 minutes dressing neatly without marching bags, and their natural movements were very fast. All 5 minutes were wasted because they were not proficient in this kind of clothing. German instructor Bauer stood under the dormitory building with a cold face, his legs trembling in long riding boots, and his cigar smoking from his mouth. Another instructor, Ebel, walked over and said, "Bauer, you're smoking again. If Duden sees you, Yu reading www.uukangshu.net will give you a few whips." Bauer glanced at him and said, "Duden wouldn't come to see these yellow-skinned monkeys." Abel. Bauer. Don't forget, these Chinese officers were personally selected by the dictators of Eastern China and brought by General André. It's best not to hear your words from their leader, the combat instructor named Cold Peak who defeated the skeletons, Heyman. Bauer glanced at him again and said, "I didn't see it, I only saw Harman knock the 2 of them unconscious." Ebel shook his head helplessly and said, "You know, Bauer, it was Harman who used his elbows to attack them while they were not paying attention. That Cold Peak leg kicked and congested Harman's eyes. Now Harman is still a rabbit." Upon hearing this, Bauer chuckled and said, "However, this is really a relief. Harman has always relied on himself as the SS and disregarded us, even taking half of his cigars." Ebel shrugged and said, "However, Harman's elbow strike is also very strong. I hope these 2 little guys won't die in bed." Bauer took a puff of his cigar and said, "That's not necessarily true. Harman has beaten the students to death with his elbow not once or twice. I think they'll have to roll back to China this time even if they don't die." Ebel glanced at the dormitory building and shook his head. "Bauer, you were wrong this time. They have come out in a lively state, here." With a finger, Leng Feng and Gung Liang dressed neatly and stood at attention in front of the dormitory building. Bauer opened his mouth in surprise, and the cigar in his mouth fell off. Harman knew when he hit him with his elbow. "Is it true that Chinese people are made of iron? Do you know Kung Fu?" Leng Feng and Gung Liang, it was their first time coming to Germany and also their first time participating in training at a famous German military academy during World War II. It was a bit exciting. Chapter 3. Special Forces, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bauer walked up to Leng Feng and Gung Liang with his hands behind his back, and said contemptuously in Chinese, "You guys, alive, it's great." Leng Feng and Gung Liang exchanged a glance, and a sentence flashed through their minds. Why is there no language bug? As a military academy student, my college entrance examination score is at least enough to get into Tsinghua and Peking University, so my English is completely at an abnormal level. However, this German is not something that the 2 of them are good at. 10 minutes later, the other students rushed over and stood at attention, using Leng Feng and Gung Liang as benchmarks. Bauer nodded and looked at Abel, saying in German, "Abel, I don't speak Chinese very well, come on." Abel walked over helplessly and announced today's training subject. Today's training subject is still combat training. Leng Feng, Gung Liang, can you two still participate? Leng Feng and Gung Liang exchanged a glance, stood at attention together, and answered in unison, yes, sir. Great, lead the team to the second training ground. Ebel admired Leng Feng and Gung Liang a bit. There was a piece of metal underneath the Nazi military uniform and boots, and there was always a clattering sound when walking, especially when a group of people walked together. It was very imposing. Ha! Why are the walking postures of the captain and vice-captain different? The students behind quickly noticed the non-standard but very clean walking postures of Leng Feng and Gung Liang. Not only those students were discovered, but also Ball and Ebel. Ebel quietly asked Ball, have you noticed? Their walking posture seems to have undergone special training, with light steps but neat and uniform, and they can even flatten every wrinkle of the great imperial military uniform. Bauer also smashed his cigar in his mouth and said, it seems a bit different from other Chinese people, and different from the footsteps of the SS. The SS footsteps walk like a duck. Ha! Ebel looked up and smiled twice. Upon arriving at the training ground, Leng Feng and Gung Liang immediately felt a murderous gaze. Leng Feng looked over and it was the big white bear from yesterday. The big white bear walked over with a fierce aura, and Ebel immediately welcomed him. Harman, what do you want to do? This big white bear is Haman. Haman said, what are you doing? Those two damn yellow-skinned monkeys have beaten my eyes like this, I want to strangle them. Bauer walked over with a sneer, hugging his arm and saying, what's wrong? Even the Grand Harman likes to settle accounts after current events like a hypocritical Englishman. Haman looked at Leng Feng and Gung Liang with anger and hatred, made a gesture that Leng Feng and Gung Liang couldn't understand, and then walked away with a red eye. Bauer glanced at Leng Feng and Gung Liang, didn't say anything extra, and turned around to chat with another instructor. Ebel shrugged and walked over, it seems like you need a new combat instructor. Leng Feng and Gung Liang are confident that they have completed their initial military combat skills here through training at the military academy. Not long after, a silver-haired Nazi walked by. This is Colonel Coney. Ebel immediately stood at attention when he saw the silver-haired Nazi approaching. Leng Feng wondered, the chief instructor here seems to be the one they're talking about. Duden, who is this Coney? Ebel had a serious expression on his face, and his heels merged fiercely. Coach Coney. This silver-haired instructor nodded arrogantly, scanning Leng Feng and his group of students like eagles, including those from Italy, China, and Japan. I am Instructor Coney, the chief instructor of your foreign trainees. As you call Duden, he is my student, and in the future, you can only refer to me as the chief instructor. Instructor Coney was very strict. Nanny Duden is also his student. What kind of person is this German guy? A student who accidentally spoke Japanese caught the attention of Leng Feng and the disgust of Gung Liang. Suddenly, their hostility emanated from all their pores. Coney's gaze quickly turned to the speaking Japanese student and said coldly, in your code, are you allowed to speak freely in the queue? Then, with an unquestionable tone, he said, the 20th Army stick. After finishing speaking, Ebel glanced aside and forced the Japanese student who had just spoken to stand out. Then, two soldiers emerged from somewhere and dragged him away. A few minutes later, he heard his heart-wrenching cries of grief. Leng Feng and Gung Liang flashed an imperceptible sneer at the corners of their mouths, but Coney caught them straight away. Coney frowned and said, what's wrong? Your friends have been punished, are you very happy? Before Gung Liang could speak, Leng Feng immediately stood at attention and said, report to the chief instructor, may I speak? Coney's gaze was startled and he said, sure. Leng Feng stood at attention and said, report to the chief instructor, he is not my friend, he is my enemy, I am a soldier, and I will not have any mercy or sympathy for my enemy. As soon as Leng Feng said this, all the students were in an uproar. Even if there were grievances between different countries, no one dared to openly say this here. Kony squinted his eyes and said, but this is Berlin. The trainees here are all brothers, understand? Leng Feng stood at attention again and said, report to the chief instructor, I don't understand. Ebel was so scared that he was completely scared. Did this cold peak have its head broken by Harmon yesterday? How dare you talk to Kony like this? Do you know who Kony is? What a newborn calf is not afraid of tigers. Kony's gaze was strange as he walked into Cold Peak and said fiercely, I'm not asking for your opinion, I'm telling you, you're brothers. Do you understand? Chinese students. Cold Feng's gaze flickered with hatred. Report to the chief instructor. No. Ming. Bye. He is my enemy, he was, is, will be, and will be. I will not be brothers with the enemy. Otherwise, it will be treason. When dealing with traitors, we will greet their ancestors for 18 generations. Kony stared fixedly at Leng Feng for a long time, then turned his back and said, I'm not interested in things related to your country, it's just in Berlin. Fighting between students is not allowed. Leng Feng stood at attention again, and Ebel cried in his heart, praying to you. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net, stop talking, please, but Ebel's plea Leng Feng did not hear. Leng Feng indeed spoke again. Report to the chief instructor, I won't take action at the Great German Military Academy. If he appears in my country with a gun, I will leave him with no place to bury himself. Kony's pace hesitated for a moment, he turned his back and asked, what about the other Chinese students? Are they all thinking the same? Gung Liang had been waiting for a long time and immediately stood at attention, saying, yes. I will make them die without leaving any residue. Kony smiled at the corner of his mouth, but no one saw him. Kony took 2 steps and said, next time you answer my question, remember to call out the report. Gung Liang. Report to the chief instructor, yes. Then Kony left unexpectedly, and Ebel's heart collapsed to the point where he almost wanted to hold on to the thighs of Leng Feng and Gung Liang and say, 2 ancestors. Bauer, who had always been aloof, actually walked up to Abel and whispered to him, I didn't hear you wrong. This guy named Gung Liang didn't shout a report and didn't get punished. Moreover, Coach Kony's tone seemed unusually affectionate. If Leng Feng heard Bauer's words, he would definitely collapse to the ground. Is this Nima called exceptionally affectionate? Is this called intimacy? Still abnormal. Abel whispered helplessly to Bauer, don't forget, little Kony died in the hands of the French. Although Coach Kony didn't say it, he must have appreciated the words of the Chinese students. Bauer nodded in agreement and said, that's right, I bet if the Empire goes to war with the French, Coach Kony will definitely be the first to carry a gun up there. Do you dare to bet? A box of whiskey and a box of Brazilian cigars. Ebel gave him a white glance and said, no need to bet. I also bet that Coach Kony will participate in the war, even though he's almost 60 years old. Chapter 4. Special Forces, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the beginning of the training, Leng Feng and Gung Liang's confidence gradually disappeared because they found that what the Germans taught were all killing moves, fierce and not flashy. Even if some moves were not attractive, they could definitely make the opponent feel excruciating pain, especially when they hit the bridge of the nose with their elbows. The person who was knocked down basically had no ability to fight back. In military academies, although fighting skills are much more advanced than they are now, because they are all classmates and teachers, they dare not use any moves. Even free combat has regulations on which areas can be fought and which areas cannot be fought. But here, there are not so many rules, as long as you knock it down on the ground, any method is possible. Cold Feng and Gung Liang couldn't help but mutter in their hearts. When assigning Leng Feng and Fujiwara Maru Group and Gung Liang and Yamaguchi Palace Group, Kony deliberately arranged Leng Feng and Gung Liang with the 2 Japanese students. Ebel and Ball were muttering, did Coach Kony mean it on purpose? It must have been intentional. Why did he do it? Who knows, maybe Coach Coney wanted to see if these two Chinese students are someone who only knows how to speak but dare not act. In the group with Lingfeng, there is a guy named Fujiwara Maru, who is not tall, Japan is all short, and has filed a head higher than Lingfeng. It seems that he is the leader of their Japanese student team in Germany this time. Group with Gung Liang, slightly larger in size, but still not as tall as Gung Liang, with slightly developed muscles. Prepare for the fight. Heyman ordered, and the four of them immediately entered a combat state. However, what made Ling Feng a little unhappy was that this Fujiwara Maru had a murderous aura on his body, not that he wanted to kill himself, but one thing is certain. He had killed someone. Start. As Heyman spoke, Yamaguchi Miyako hit Gung Liang like a shell. However, Gung Liang moved his step slightly, as if casually extending a foot. Yamaguchi Miyako stumbled over Gung Liang and plunged into the hard, cement-like soil with a thud. When he got up again, Gung Liang pretended to be surprised and opened his mouth, looking at Yamaguchi Miyako's mouth, which was missing two front teeth. Ahem, Yamaguchi Palace felt the pain and immediately covered his mouth, howling in place. As a result, Gung Liang leaned forward and pretended to be concerned, asking, "Are you okay?" As soon as Yamaguchi Miyako nodded, Gung Liang suddenly gave him a hard kick on his lower abdomen. Yamaguchi Miyako covered his mouth and flew backwards. He sat down on the ground with a thud. Before he could even get up, Gung Liang came back and kicked Yamaguchi Miyako's chin, shining on his raised head. Kabak Nazi boots were not canvas shoes. With this kick, they were still kicked with the heel. Miyako Yamaguchi's chin hit his upper gum hard, and the crisp sound of fractures made it difficult to distinguish where he had broken. Most importantly, when Yamaguchi Miyako was kicked under the chin, he was about to say something when his tongue had not yet been retracted. In this way, Yamaguchi Miyako bit off his own tongue. Heyman immediately ran over and said, "Stop. Stop." He stopped Gung Liang's next move. Heyman was convinced that if he didn't stop, Gung Liang would really kill the Japanese. The two of them worked together in unison. It was Gung Liang's attack and Yamaguchi Miyako's beating, which made everyone present dumbfounded, including Ling Feng and Fujiwara Maru who were preparing to attack. Fujiwara Maru reacted and kicked Ling Feng while he wasn't paying attention. Despite being short, Fujiwara Maru made a vertical fork and was afraid he wouldn't be able to kick Ling Feng in the face. This kick hit Ling Feng's neck. Feeling the wind, Ling Feng instinctively turned around and saw a silhouette. He instinctively blocked it with his hand, and Fujiwara Maru's leg kicked Ling Feng's arm. "I'm pretty energetic, little Japanese." Ling Feng's right hand was sore and numb. If it weren't for playing free combat frequently, Ling Feng would have thought his arm was broken. Fujiwara Maru kicked again, still aimed at Ling Feng's neck. However, this time Ling Feng was prepared. When Fujiwara Maru kicked his leg to his neck, Ling Feng quickly hugged Fujiwara Maru's ankle and twisted it in the opposite direction with force. If in modern times, when encountering an opponent grabbing one's ankle, one must immediately roll in the direction of the opponent's twisting to ensure that one's ankle is not twisted, and when rolling, pull back the leg and kick it again to escape. But at this point, the fighting skills were not as advanced, and Fujiwara Maru was stunned as he pulled his leg back. As a result, everyone heard a continuous, not very clear, cluck sound, which was the sound of fractures. Heyman was almost about to turn his other eye red with anxiety. Gung Liang took a desperate action, and Yamaguchi Miyako was immediately taken to the medical room to treat his bitten tongue. Why did it break again on this side? Ah! Yaga! Yaga! Fujiwara Maru held his left ankle in his arms and wailed, his face turning pale. He must be in excruciating pain. As soon as Ling Feng heard the word "baga," he exploded and rushed over to kick Fujiwara Maru's wide mouth, only to be hugged by Harmon. "All right. Stop it. Stop it." Heyman hugged Ling Feng tightly, because he was once again certain, incredibly certain, how lucky he was just to have one red eye. The fighting lasted only a few minutes, and the Japanese students ended in such a miserable situation. Two Italian students began to discuss, "Oh my God, they are simply Satans." Yes, fortunately Italy will not attack China, otherwise I will stay far away from them. But what about those two Japanese people? I don't know, maybe they'll be sworn enemies in the future. Several Germans huddled together and said, "I think their attack seems particularly practical." Yes, Harman has never taught us before. Why don't we go find them tonight? Are you going to fight with them? If you want to go by yourself, I don't want my chin to break. I want to kiss my dear Heiner with my tongue. This German student couldn't help but cover his chin when he thought of Miyako Yamaguchi. Fools, of course I went to learn from them. Can they teach? You don't understand that. Chinese people love face the most. As long as we are willing to call them masters, they will definitely teach us. Are you telling the truth? If it's wrong, I owe you a bottle of French brandy. Deal. We'll go tonight. After tidying up two Japanese people, Leng Feng and Gung Liang still had lingering fear. For the first time, they made such a fierce gesture and exchanged a casual glance. Coach Coney, who was watching from a distance, nodded in satisfaction and turned his head to leave. During lunch, Leng Feng and Gung Liang led their 8 colleagues to a table next to a Japanese table. Leng Feng and Gung Liang could clearly feel a mixture of angry, hostile, and fearful gazes. Gung Liang whispered to Leng Feng, "I think I can add fuel to their fire tonight." Although Leng Feng didn't know how Gung Liang used his special skills, Leng Feng rolled his eyes and thought for a moment before asking Gung Liang, "Did you make yesterday's snake?" Gung Liang gave Leng Feng a casual glance and silently put a piece of steak from his plate into Leng Feng's plate, which was self-evident. Leng Feng gave him a white glance and said, "I still have lingering palpitations when I wake up in the morning. What do you want to do?" Gung Liang swallowed a cold potato and said, "I want them to be defeated or even killed countless times in their dreams. I want them to have this dream for several days in a row, so that they will subconsciously think that we are invincible. At least when they face us, they will first feel timid." Leng Feng nodded and said, "Okay, but what do you think we can do this year?" Gung Liang shook his head and said, "Actually, I don't know. Although we come from the future, after all, this is a big environment. Even if we have the ability to control the sky, it's probably just a wave. Besides, it's just a game. Why are we so serious? Can history still change?" Leng Feng shrugged and said, "What I'm saying is, just like playing games, even if I turn on the hook again, it can't stop the damn NPC from hanging up. If it's time to hang up, even if I block bullets for him, he still has to hang up." Gung Liang said, "Let's not dwell on this anymore. Why are you so conflicted?" While speaking, Chief Instructor Coney walked over and held a plate. Cold Feng and Gung Liang immediately stood up and saluted, "Hello, Chief Instructor." Coney looked coldly at the motionless Japanese student sitting next to him, with no expression on his face. Instead, he asked Leng Feng and Gung Liang, "Come with me this afternoon." Leng Feng and Gung Liang are unaware of their whereabouts. Is it possible that they will be punished for beating and maiming the two devils? Isn't it? Shocking lunch break, everyone, go back to the dormitory. The lunch break is very short, and the rest time is even shorter. All the exhausted students immediately lined up and returned to the dormitory. Before leaving, Gung Liang didn't know if he could connect with the dreams of those two unlucky ghosts so far away. Returning to the room, Gung Liang didn't even take off his shoes. He immediately lay on the bed, activated his brain cells, desperately trying to connect the dreams of those two devils, but there was no signal. Gung Liang got up dejected and said, "It's hard not to sleep with them in order to control the dream. Isn't it?" Leng Feng also scratched his head and said, "Is it related to distance? Let me check where they are." As he spoke, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the ever-changing map with nothing in it. Looking at the huge military academy, Ling Feng first looked for a hospital. Here. Ling Feng pointed to the two obvious red dots on the hospital map, pointed his finger, and the map expanded. The location of the two red dots became more detailed, and their information was also revealed. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. Yamaguchi Miichi, male, 22 years old, is a member of the Fujiwara family and belongs to the Japanese Army headquarters. He holds the rank of captain. Friendly rating .80, quite hostile. Fujiwara Maru, male, 21 years old, belongs to the Fujiwara family and is a nobleman. He is subordinate to the Japanese Army headquarters and holds the rank of lieutenant colonel. Friendly .100, extremely hostile. Ling Feng and Gung Liang spoke in unison, nobility. That's right, the Fujiwara family is a Japanese aristocrat, so the status of Fujiwara Maru can be imagined. Ling Feng. Hey, are you confident? Gung Liang blinked and said, maybe. There is. Undoubtedly, Ling Feng and Gung Liang have transformed the Japanese nobility into this virtue, and they will definitely face a fierce counterattack. Therefore, it is very important to make them fear themselves in a short period of time and have an eternal nightmare. Gung Liang suddenly said, wait, zoom in on the map. Let me know what they are doing, let me know what they are saying and thinking. Ling Feng was taken aback for a moment, immediately closing his eyes and placing his fingers on the red dots. In his mind, the two of them lay on the hospital bed and harbored hatred towards Ling Feng and Gung Liang, especially for Miyoshi Yamaguchi, who had bitten off his tongue and could no longer speak, but looked at his gaze as if he wanted to eat people. As Ling Feng spoke, he observed the two people like opening a surveillance camera. Shortly after, he opened his eyes and was about to speak when he noticed Gung Liang sitting on a chair and falling asleep. Ling Feng opened the surveillance again and found that these two people were actually sleeping, and seeing their expressions becoming more and more solemn, Fujiwara Maru even trembled. Fujiwara Maru sat up in fear. Although Yamaguchi Miyako was not awake, his head swayed left and right, indicating that he was in a painful dream. Good job. Cold Feng saw the sweat on Gung Liang's head and knew what he was doing. Fifth buried line, 1. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The lunch break quickly ended, and Gung Liang was exhausted. Cold Feng asked Gung Liang, are you thirsty? Can I pour you some water? Gung Liang said, half a cup of cold water and half a cup of hot water. Take the hot water first and then the cold water, so you won't scald your mouth. Ling Feng. Gung Liang drank the water from the cup and said, I'm so tired, really tired. Controlling their dreams for half an hour is even more tiring than running 10 kilometers with a load of 10 kilograms. Ling Feng handed Gung Liang a warm towel and said, come on, wipe your sweat. Gung Lianbai glanced at Ling Feng and said, what's going on? If you don't have anything to attend to, you can either be a traitor or a thief. Ling Feng pretended to be very righteous and said, you're so tired. As my brother, is it wrong to care about you? Gung Liang wiped his face and put down the towel, are you afraid that I will continue to make you have nightmares? Ling Feng. Did you guess? Gung Liang wiped his sweat and said, I'm so tired. I have to train this afternoon, I'm so tired. Ling Feng reacted and said, oh by the way, don't forget, what did that German guy call us this afternoon? Gung Liang stopped wiping his sweat and looked at Ling Feng in a daze. I forgot something clean. What did he call us for? It's not like asking for punishment. After all, we've beaten the two Japanese devils so badly. I think it might be a good thing, said Ling Feng with profound meaning. The whistle sounded, and Ling Feng and Gung Liang had to pack their clothes and gather downstairs. As expected, there was Chief Instructor Koni standing next to Ebel. Coney seemed to feel that the morning had not happened and never mentioned the so-called accidental injury in the morning. As soon as Leng Feng and Gung Liang came out, Ebel asked them to come out separately. Leng Feng, Gung Liang, Chief Instructor Coney asked you to come with him to his office. Ebel gave Leng Feng and Gung Liang a meaningful glance. Coney carried his hands in front, while Leng Feng and Gung Liang walked behind. Soon, they arrived at the instructor's dormitory, where the largest office suite seemed to belong to Coney. At the door, Coney opened the door and turned to look at Leng Feng and Gung Liang. Unconsciously, Leng Feng and Gung Liang stood at attention. Hello, Chief Instructor. Leng Feng and Gung Liang stood at attention, and Coney pointed expressionlessly to the chair. This is my office, and it's also my dormitory. It's a private space, so there's no need to be constrained. Leng Feng and Gung Liang had some doubts. Why did this German guy bring him to his dormitory? Coney walked up to the cabinet and brought himself a glass of whiskey. Cold Pete keenly saw that there were only 2 tall glasses in his cabinet, which were valuable. If it were normal, the other cup should belong to his spouse. Coney drank whiskey on his own, while Leng Feng and Gung Liang stood straight without sitting down. Coney leaned against his desk and looked at the two of them. After a moment, Coney seemed to be muttering to himself and asked, "What do you think Germany should do next?" Leng Feng and Gung Liang exchanged a glance, unsure of how to answer. Coney continued to mutter to himself, 18 years ago, my son died at the hands of the French. He was an excellent commander, but he was beaten into a sieve by the French. I am German, what do you think I should do? Leng Feng glanced at Gung Liang and said, revenge. Coney's eyes widened, his back turned to Cold Peak, but he gently said, I'm already old. Leng Feng. It's Germany, we need revenge. Coney squinted his eyes and said, if I remember correctly, China also fought against Germany in the last war. Do you want your enemies to seek revenge? Leng Feng snorted and said, Chief Instructor, if I remember correctly, during the last war, Japan also fought against Germany. However, the leader Adolf seemed to be closer to R.B. Coney and immediately turned around, saying, how did you know? Leng Feng's expression remained unchanged. There is an ancient saying in China that goes, Sima Zhao's heart is well known to everyone. Germany's tanks have already been filled with fuel, and even if I don't say it, Germany's tanks will still start. But if the country is enough, don't say it. Coney interrupted Leng Feng. Gung Liang looked at Leng Feng and said, there are no eternal enemies or friends, but RB will always be the enemy of China, and China will not forget the help Germany has provided to China. Coney stared intently at Leng Feng and asked word by word, who do you prefer to go to war with, England or France? If we follow the usual conversation, Leng Feng should say France because Coney's son died at the hands of the French. Speaking of France would be beneficial for building good relations with Coney, but Leng Feng slammed his foot hard on the ground and said, report to the chief instructor, I would rather go to war with Poland first. Coney was surprised and said, why? Leng Feng remained calm and said, because at the Paris Peace Conference, Poland was the first to agree to RB's occupation of the former German-occupied Jiaodong Peninsula, so I want to attack Poland first. Gung Liang widened his eyes and said to himself, you bastard, how do you know so much? I don't even know about this. Coney approached Cold Peak and said, do you know that France, Britain, and Poland are strategic allies? Do you know that they attacked Poland? Reading www.uukangshu.net, may Britain and France immediately fight against Germany. Leng Feng. I know, Chief Instructor, but you only asked me who I wanted to attack, not who I should attack, so I only started from emotions, not from reality. Coney roared, you are a commander who will command the army in the future. As an excellent commander, you cannot act impulsively. In the eyes of a commander, wanting to do is equivalent to doing it. You cannot start from emotions, only from reality. Do you understand? Leng Feng and Gung Liang stood at attention and said, understand, instructor. Koni's expression softened slightly and he said, I have reported the morning's incident to your consulate and the people from your military statistics bureau. Perhaps they will talk to you tonight, but don't worry, I have completely pushed your responsibility. You only need to firmly believe that they will take action first. The college will provide relevant proof materials. Ling Feng. Thank you, Chief Instructor. Koni nodded and said, all right, you guys go. Ling Feng and Gung Liang bowed, turned around and left, leaving Koni holding a cup and walking to the bedroom. In front of a huge map, they touched their chin and focused their gaze on a country. Poland. Poland. Is this a coincidence? Koni muttered to himself. Gung Liang asked Ling Feng, you're foolish. Why did you say Poland? Why didn't you say France? Maybe it made this plague god unhappy. Ling Feng shrugged and said, I don't know why. Anyway, I instinctively followed what was said in the history book. Besides, maybe this chief instructor Koni is a person. Maybe we're good at what we said. Can you give us some help? Gung Liang nodded and said, yes, if we talk about France, there is a suspicion of flattery. Ling Feng. Yes. Sixth buried line, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, as soon as Ling Feng and Gung Liang arrived at the training ground, they were immediately notified to go to the Military Statistics Office of China stationed in Berlin, Germany. Upon hearing this news, Ling Feng and Gung Liang couldn't help but raise their hair, and they kept whispering. Ling Feng. What should I do? I haven't seen any spies before. Gung Liang gritted his teeth and said, what do you think I've seen before? Ling Feng. What if I ask about things in the morning, to be honest or not to be honest? Gung Liang glared fiercely at Ling Feng and popped out word by word, no, I know, Dao, you ask me who I'm going to ask. As two German soldiers were about to take Ling Feng and the two of them to the nearby Huaxia Military Statistics Office, Ling Feng and Gung Liang felt a chill in their hearts. At this moment, Ling Feng suddenly had an idea. Let's investigate the people in this office. Gung Liang snapped his fingers and said, go to the restroom. Then Ling Feng and Gung Liang told the soldiers in very poor German that they wanted to go to the restroom. The German soldiers shrugged and said if they wanted to go, they could go. So Ling Feng and Gung Liang quickly rushed into the toilet on the first floor of a nearby building, and after confirming that there was no one else in the pit, they unethically locked the toilet door. Ling Feng took out the map and immediately opened the military statistics office. However, the second question came. There are several people in the military statistics office, so who should they check? Finally, Gung Liang made a decision to investigate the person sitting in the largest office. The official must be the biggest. With a flick of the finger, this person's profile immediately appeared. Zheng Cheng, male, 45 years old, Director of the National Military Survey and Statistics Bureau, Director of the German Office, Major rank, friendliness, 25, appreciated. Ling Feng and Gung Liang breathed a sigh of relief, fortunately everything was okay. Gung Liang blinked and said, then should we tell the truth? Ling Feng closed the map and stuffed it into his pocket, saying, of course not. Let's just say it's the confrontation training arranged by the Germans. The little devils took the initiative, and were just the focus, but it's also what the German instructor requested. Gung Liang nodded and said, that's right, so his relationship with us is still. Make do with it, I shouldn't delve into it. Walking. Ling Feng and Gung Liang walked out of the restroom feeling refreshed, followed the German soldiers into the military statistics office, and arrived at the office. After checking Ling Feng and Gung Liang's documents, the two German soldiers allowed them to pass. Entering the office, there is naturally a Chinese military officer leading the way. This officer only holds the rank of lieutenant, but he is very enthusiastic. I heard that you two disabled and severely injured one of the two students from Japan's stupid country. That's enough. I've heard that 2 of the students who came for training this time were sent in by Education Changli to eliminate public opinion. It's just you 2. The lieutenant continued, and the appraisal was completed. Ling Feng. Overpraised. Overpraised. Gung Liang. He, bang bang bang, report, Ling Feng and Gung Liang are here, the lieutenant reported to the people in the room and turned to leave. After entering the office, Ling Feng and Gung Liang thought that this person had a high level of friendliness with the 2 of them, so there shouldn't be anything wrong with them. However, as soon as they entered, they met a iron-green face. Ling Feng and Gung Liang have never met the spy leader, so they are very embarrassed and have nothing to say, not even the most basic salute. Zheng Qing stood up with a pale face and walked up to Ling Feng and Gung Liang without saying a word. He walked back and forth with his hands behind his back, causing Ling Feng and Gung Liang to start sweating from their backs. Just when Ling Feng and Gung Liang thought Zheng Qing was going to wear down his leather shoes before he spoke up, Zheng Qing suddenly spoke. Crazy you guys. You guys are so crazy. They've all been abroad. It's been less than half a year now, how much trouble has been caused? There was a conflict with German soldiers in the library, and a conflict with Japanese fools in the cafeteria. A few days ago, they provoked the SS fighting instructor Harmon, and yesterday they disabled the Japanese fool's leader and followers. You guys have been working non-stop all day. Zheng Qing said coldly. Ling Feng said, Sir, this is an adversarial training arranged by the instructor. It was the little devil who provoked me first. Ling Feng became increasingly angry as he listened and said, Report to the chief. Why? Zheng Qing was very surprised and put his foot on Ling Feng's chest, kicking him out 1 meter. I'm the commander. This is Chairman Zhang's order. Gung Liang's fists clenched with a gurgling sound next to him. Ling Feng got up and stared, I don't agree. What's wrong with the little devil? As long as he dares to provoke me, I want him to look good. Zheng Qing laughed back angrily and picked up Ling Feng's collar, saying, Can you handle it? Even your teacher dares to talk back. Provoke you. Do you want him to look good? Do you know who this Fujiwara Maru is? And do you know that his family controls tens of thousands of elite Guangdong army soldiers in northeast China? You have such skills, go and take back northeast China. Go. Ling Feng said with hatred, one day. I will. Then he felt like he was spinning around and fell to the ground in all directions with a thud. Zheng Qing gave Ling Feng a hard shoulder throw and said, If you had used this energy to suppress the Communist Party, you would have been promoted to major long ago. But you. Whenever you mentioned going to the Heshi province, you would have been humming and grinding, and even found the Minister of Education to recommend you for training in Germany. Ling Feng roared, Sir. The Japanese fools have bullied us, and we still beat our own people. Is that interesting? Bastard. Zheng Qing kicked Ling Feng's cheek and said, The principal has his own arrangements. It's your turn to give orders. When fighting against the outside, you must first settle the inside. This is a national policy. Gung Liang's fingernails were embedded in his palm, but he blushed and didn't say a word. Zheng Qing gave Ling Feng a beating, as if he had calmed down a bit. His expression softened a bit, and he said, You are still young and don't understand politics. I'll just say these things to you. Don't bring them up in front of my other colleagues in the Military Statistics Bureau. The principal treats pro-communist elements like communists. All right. You go apologize to Fujiwara Maru later. Ling Feng glared angrily and said, No. You want me to apologize to the little devil? Let's go to the next life. No. The next life is also impossible. Zheng Qing had a resentful expression on his face and said, Look at you, you're still the same. You never stop talking. Look at Gung Liang, no wonder he's always one rank higher than you. With your mouth, I see how long you can get promoted. Then Xingqing asked Gung Liang to lift Ling Feng up and said, get lost. Two ancestors. Then he sighed and shook his head. Leaving the office, Ling Feng was about to speak when Gung Liang said, don't talk, this is the military statistics office. Cold Feng could only swallow the words on his lips. When he arrived at a deserted place, Ling Feng couldn't help but say, you're so cowardly. I've never been so cowardly before. I finally realized what it means to be a weak country without diplomacy. The little devils have occupied a large area of territory, and surprisingly, Jiang Tuzi is still thinking about civil war. I really want to shoot this old and immortal thing with one shot. If you want to fight against the outside, you must first settle the inside. Oh my goodness. You bastard. Gung Liang looked at Ling Feng and complained, is it enough? Think about what to do if it's enough. Anyway, I understand. If you want to fight the Japanese stupid devils, Jiang Tuzi in this time and space can't be relied on. Ling Feng. What do you mean? To Yenin. Gung Liangbai glanced at Ling Feng and said, how did you learn history? The Red Army's long march is not over yet, Yenin is still Yenin. Ling Feng. What should we do then? Gung Liang looked at Ling Feng with an idiotic gaze and said, first of all, let's think about it. We are the legitimate lineage of Chiang Kai-shek, and it seems that the military intelligence and various relationships around us are very complex. If you have any ulterior motives, don't plan on it. It's too easy to expose it. The top priority now is how to think about climbing up, gaining more military power, and improving equipment. After all, we need to fight against the Japanese. We are always a small captain and have some hair to use. Ling Feng also calmed down and said, but if we want to make a living in such a rotten national army, we probably won't be able to stand firm anymore. Gung Liang sighed and said, steel is easy to break. In order to make it easier to defeat the Japanese, I have to endure it. Ling Feng. Hold back. You really hold back. Gung Liang smiled and said, actually, we cannot hold back. Ling Feng raised his eyebrows and Gung Liang said, let's shoot ourselves in the head and go back. Don't hold back then. Ling Feng waved his hand and said, that's not possible. If a Japanese guy didn't kill him, he would sneak back in despair. He's not a coward. Gung Liang. Have you figured it out? Ling Feng patted his head and said, I've figured it out. A man can bend and stretch. For the sake of the great cause of the anti-Japanese war, he flatters and colludes with others. Gung Liang rolled his eyes helplessly and said, you really can't speak. This is called acting. It all depends on what we do, it doesn't seem like it anymore. At this moment, Coney left the military academy and went to another military stronghold. The guards saw Coney and all stood respectfully, saying, Coach Coney. Connie. Is Mr. William there? Guard. In, Connie. Great, I'll go find him. Guard. The division commander must be very happy to see you. Coney nodded. Coney was located at the headquarters of the German Armed Forces 2nd Armored Division. 7th Buried Line, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Upon seeing Connie, Captain William was very happy and said, oh, instructor, my chief of staff, you're finally willing to come find me. Coney changed his face and walked up to William's map, saying, I have something to tell you about the students studying at the Berlin Military Academy this time. William, dressed in neat Nazi military uniform, said, oh. Did you find military talent? Coney nodded and said, that's right, I found 2 other students who share the same opinion as the Fu Hrer and you. William walked around the table and faced Coney, are you saying that there are 2 students, and you also suggest attacking Poland first? Coney nodded and said, that's right, 2 Chinese students. William pondered deeply, have they given a reason? Connie. I gave it, but it was very perfunctory, not their true thoughts. I could hear their reasons were very perfunctory. William, believe me, they must be the talents that the empire needs. After listening, William suddenly realized, Chinese students. Did you make a mistake? Coney. I'm also very sorry, it was 2 Chinese students, and in the morning, they even disabled 2 Japanese stupid students. Upon hearing this, William burst out laughing and said, ha ha ha, my chief of staff, I already want to see these 2 little guys. I can't stand those yellow-skinned shorties for a long time. Coney. I think it's possible, and we need to do it as soon as possible. As far as I know, they may be recalled to Huaxia this year, and we must take action in advance. William clapped his hands and said, very good. As long as they are willing to come, I have enough reason to let them join the great Germanic nation, the great German nationality. When Ling Feng and Gung Liang walked back to the training ground, they had already started preparing for dinner. When Ebel saw Ling Feng and the others coming back, his expression was very unnatural. Ebel and Bauer walked over together and said, oh, you 2 have finally returned. Hurry up and lead the team back to eat. Ebel usually doesn't speak like this, and Ling Feng had an ominous feeling in his heart. When Cold Peak was counting the number of people, he suddenly realized that there seemed to be 1 person missing. Where's Du Jiu? Cold Feng realized that the tall and thin student who was pulling his sleeve after waking up was missing. Ebel. Listen to me, Ling Feng, that student was just taken away by someone from the China Military Statistics Office. We cannot stop him. Ling Feng asked the other students next to him, what's going on? Why was Du Jiu taken away? An older student sighed and said, Captain, don't ask. Du Jiu was taken away by the Military Statistics Bureau. He's either a Japanese spy or a Communist Party member. Cold Feng and Gung Liangru were struck by lightning. I've only been out for 2 hours, why? Why? 2 hours ago, Ling Feng and Gung Liang left the Military Statistics Office. Zheng Qing frowned and said to his subordinates, usually these 2 people are cynical guys, but they dare not say such disobedient words. I don't know what's going on today. I think things are not simple. There must be a communist party among the students this time. You go contact the insider to see if there are any clues. Subordinate. Yes. 10 minutes later, his subordinates walked in and said, report to the office. Insiders say that the student Du Jiu from this time has significant suspicions. He entered the military as an independent party while in Huangpu. It is said that some people have seen him have close contact with communist instructors. Zheng Cheng's face turned gloomy and he slammed the table heavily, saying, no matter what. Bring Du Jiu back to me. The chairman once said, it's better to kill 1,000 by mistake than to let 1 go. So Du Jiu was actually captured by the Military Statistics Bureau while Ling Feng and Gung Liang were slowly walking back due to chatting. Ling Feng and Gung Liang never expected that their momentary exaggeration would cause such serious consequences, which shows how terrifying the White Terror was at that time. After returning to the dormitory, Ling Feng and Gung Liang conducted a series of analyses. Ling Feng said, I don't think the Military Statistics Bureau has conclusive evidence. It may be released in a few days, after all, it has been sent to Germany for further education and will not be easily dealt with. Gung Liang said, hee, what were the charges against Yu Fei back then? Cold Feng remained speechless. That's right, Yu Fei's charges were unfounded, maybe there were, maybe not. Cold Feng's mind finally began to move. He decisively took out the map, found the Military Statistics Office again, and found Du Jiu. After clicking on it, he was stunned for a long time without saying a word. Gung Liang looked at Ling Feng's expression and remained silent for a moment before asking, can we save him? Ling Feng raised his head and said, help. There is no doubt that Du Jiu's identity is clearly displayed on the map, and there is no doubt that the Communist Party. If Ling Feng and his companions don't drink, they will definitely die. So, Ling Feng and Gung Liang finally started using their abilities to get things done. It's not as simple as going to the cafeteria to eat something. Ling Feng opened the map and had a discussion with Gung Liang, which was actually a careful study of the terrain, topography, and personnel patrols of the Military Statistics Office. Du Jiao is in the innermost confinement room on the left side of the second floor. On the first floor, in addition to 2 security guards, there are 5 patrol personnel in groups, circling the entire building in 20 minutes. The key is likely to be on the guard's body. There are 2 guards outside the confinement room. Who are they on? I don't know. We can avoid the guards at the entrance and climb over the wall, but the problem is, the guards in the confinement room. Gung Liang pondered for a moment and said, I think we can try it out. Seeing Gung Liang's gaze at him, Ling Feng broke out in a cold sweat from his back and said, What do you want? Gung Liang showed a charming smile, and then, zzzzzzzzz, Ling Feng sat on the chair, with a crystal-clear liquid flowing from the corner of his mouth, while Gung Liang tightly closed his eyes, constructing Ling Feng's dream. A few minutes later, the dream ended and Ling Feng woke up. What happened? How did I fall asleep? Seeing Gung Liang's tired face, Ling Feng suddenly realized, you can not only control a person's dream, but more importantly, you can make someone fall asleep immediately. Gung Liang nodded and said, You're right, add 10 points. Ling Feng waved his arm vigorously and said, That's easy to say. Just let the 2 guards at the door fall asleep, that's all. Gung Liang shook his head wearily and said, I'm afraid it's not enough yet. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. Now, controlling one person is like running a load for 10 kilometers. If I control 2 people, I probably won't be able to wake up. Ling Feng frowned deeply and said, What should we do? Although the guards are 2 Germans, the Germans are very, very rigid. If only the soldiers of the Kuomintang, not misspelled, were good, they would probably be able to handle it with money. Gung Liang was gasping for breath, and it was obvious that the dream construction of those few minutes had made Gung Liang's dinner almost a waste. What should we do if it's swollen? Cold Feng plunged his head into the table and kept rolling his face, making it greasy. Oh, I'll take a few drops, it's been so long since I washed my face. So the 2 of them pondered until the lights were almost turned off, and finally Cold Feng stopped tormenting the table. He suddenly looked up and said, No. We know Du Jiao's identity, but Zheng Cheng may not know it. If we were to rescue him rashly, wouldn't we admit it to ourselves? And this is Germany. He has a Chinese face, and he can't be caught in a minute. Gung Liang's eyes darkened and he said, You're right, what should we do? Can we save him or not? What if Zheng Cheng knew what he was doing? Bang! Ling Feng started rolling the table with his face again, innocent table. Gung Liang was not idle either, rolling his eyes and turning his gaze. Countless ideas emerged and were extinguished by him one by one, all of which were unrealistic. Little Cat's Sacred Heart twin heroes have just been launched and have received praise from everyone. Little Cat is extremely grateful. It is her first time writing a military-themed novel, and some words and fonts are replaced by similar words or sounds, sometimes even leading people to understand that this child cannot speak well in society. Little Cat's tears flow down her face. It is truly not that Little Cat did not make a typo seriously, it is. Everyone understands the spirit, understand the spirit, and make do with it. Little Cat kneels here to thank you. The 8th episode of A Good Play, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at Ling Feng's side, it seems that Qian LV's skills are exhausted. That poor table can be used to make pancakes directly, or is Ling Feng's face already integrated with that table? This is not the point is, what should be done? Gung Liang held his chin until the lights turned off, and Ling Feng's face rolled the table more and more slowly, until a faint moan came from him, indicating that he had fallen asleep again. Gung Liang scratched half of the knight's head, finally feeling a little bit of the way, and decisively shook Ling Feng out of his sleep. Ling Feng's hazy sleeping eyes remained blurred. How did I fall asleep? I'm just trying to figure something out, isn't it? Gung Liang has black lines all over his head. Are you trying to find a way? You kissed the table all night, okay? Ling Feng rubbed his eyes and slammed his head onto the table with a clang. Gung Liang rolled his eyes helplessly, but this guy remained out of tune as usual. Ling Feng muttered, "This map is really real. You can only see what they're doing, but you can't hear what they're saying." That's right. During the day, Ling Feng tried to hear what Fujiwara Maru and his unlucky follower were saying, but he could only see his mouth moving and not hear any sound. Gung Liang sighed helplessly and said, "Who said it's not? Ling Feng. Have you come up with a solution?" Gung Liang's answer was straightforward. No. Ling Feng was displeased and said, "So why did you wake me up?" Gung Liang said, "It's just that you're sleeping soundly. I'm not feeling well. Let's wake you up and find a way together." Ling Feng. Not long after, Ling Feng was startled and let go of the table. His eyes were bright as he looked at Gung Liang, his hair straight. "If you enter Xing Cheng's dream, pretend to be Jiang Bald and ask what Xing Cheng is going to do you think Xing Cheng will say?" Ling Feng found some inspiration from a certain movie. Secrets that are not usually said may not be said in his dream. Gung Liang shook Ling Feng vigorously and said, "Your table didn't roll in vain, roll well. Keep rolling." Then he got up and lay down on the bed with a bang. Ling Feng looked surprised and said, "What are you doing?" Gung Liang said, "Of course it's sleep. How can you enter that dream of Xing Cheng without sleeping?" Ling Feng let out a sound and was about to roll the table when he suddenly realized, "What else are you making me think?" But when he turned around, Gung Liang had already fallen asleep. So he smiled and leaned on his head, wondering what he was thinking. As soon as Gung Liang got into bed, he began to try to connect with Xing Cheng's dream. Gung Liang found that as long as he had met this person and had communicated with him, it seemed like he could construct a dream. However, the distance of the relationship directly affected the difficulty of constructing the dream. Of course, extreme hatred also belonged to close relationships. So Gung Liang was able to easily construct dreams of two stupid Japanese devils. And this once sincere one became even more complicated. Gung Liang noticed that the spy leader seemed to have a particularly complex mind. As soon as his mind connected, it was pulled by a huge suction that caused a headache. It was like you were planning to give a beggar $1, but the other person snatched your wallet. Cough, cough, Gung Liang felt this way at the moment. It's over, will I become an idiot? Gung Liang's consciousness still existed, but he was already a bit overwhelmed. Xing Cheng dreamed that in his dream, he was happily dancing with a beautiful socialite in an officer's entertainment place in Jinling. He could even feel the slender waist of the socialite and the refreshing smell of French perfume. But somehow, when he danced, the socialite in front of him turned into Jiang Zhongzheng. Startled, Xing Cheng immediately let go of his hand and said, "President Chiang Kai-shek. Did the Communist Party catch you?" Xing Cheng said, "We are currently under interrogation, but there is suspicion and it has not been confirmed yet." Chiang Kai-shek said, "These students are all elites of the party and the state. They should not be easily dealt with, but it is even more important to prevent breeding tigers as a threat. The situation still needs to be investigated thoroughly before making a final decision." Xing Cheng. Yes, yes, yes. I understand. Chiang Kai-shek. What are you going to do next? Xing Cheng pondered for a moment and said, "President, I am observing the actions of Ling Feng and Gung Liang. If they were instigated by the Communist Party, they would definitely come to me for Du Zhio's arrest and may speak for him. Then I can be certain that Du Zhio must have a problem. If Ling Feng and Gung Liang only spoke without any action for a while, I think Du Zhio should have no problem. After all, he is the younger generation recommended by Liao Lao. Jiang Zhongjing nodded and said, "You did a good job." Then the screen suddenly turned into the smiling socialite, teasing himself and saying, "Sir, please let me dance." Zheng Qing immediately embraced him. Geng Liang finally narrowly escaped death, exhausted, didn't even want to say a word, and just went to sleep. And Lengfen, like a sculpture, sat for the latter half of the night. Did he fall asleep while sitting? The next day at dawn, Geng Liang stretched lazily and saw Lengfen sitting on a chair. He leaned over to take a look, and indeed, he was asleep. Geng Liang leaned his mouth very rudely towards Ling Feng's face. "Ah, it's his ears. Ears." And then, urgent assembly. With a loud roar, Ling Feng jumped up with a whoosh. Assembly, assembly. He was truly the class monitor, closing his eyes and shouting to wake up his classmates. However, when Ling Feng opened his eyes, he saw Geng Liang squatting on the ground, covering his nose and wanting to cry without tears. Ling Feng's head was covered in question marks, and Geng Liang gave Ling Feng a resentful glance. His nasal voice was very strong and he said, "You damn your brain, you hit my nose." To deal with Geng Liang's reckless behavior, one can only say that he deserves it. Ling Feng raised his eyebrows twice and asked Geng Liang with a displeased expression, "Tell me, I dreamt of falling into a snake's den again last night. Did you do it?" Geng Liang really wants to shout twice, "It's unfair. I am truly unjustified." Geng Liang covered his nose and shook his head frantically. "It wasn't me who did it this time, it wasn't really me who did it." But it was Ling Feng who greeted him with a skeptical gaze, and Geng Liang couldn't wash it away. But after his nose slightly improved, Geng Liang told Ling Feng about yesterday's dream. After listening, Ling Feng's expression became much more serious. "No, buddy, what do you mean? What kind of expression is that?" Geng Liang couldn't understand. Ling Feng scratched his head and said, "I mean, this method works once and twice. Can it always be used? Every time there's a secret, I dream about Jiang Tuzi asking him what to do." Geng Liang said, "Let's talk about it after this incident. We can't just watch Du Jiao get shot." Ling Feng nodded and said, "That's right. Let's talk about it. Let's start acting today." Geng Liang hugged his arm and said, "I guess exactly right. There are indeed people from the Military Statistics Bureau among the students this time, so naturally, we don't have to go to the Military Statistics Bureau specifically for acting, which is quite convenient." Ling Feng nodded and said, "Let's get up. How many more hours are left? It's almost time to gather. Should we plan something?" Before Geng Liang could speak, there was a banging sound at the door. Upon opening the door, it turned out to be those German students, one of whom seemed to have made a great decision and opened his mouth to speak. "Hi, Lang, brother," he should be saying. Geng, led by the students, self-introduction. "I am Andrews, and this is Judith and Nicholas. We, UU reading www.uukangshu.net, are here to learn from each other." Ling Feng and Geng Liang exchanged a glance, and countless question marks and exclamation marks appeared out of nowhere on their heads. What is the situation? Then, Judith and Nicholas began speaking German, leaving Ling Feng and Geng Liang confused and looking forward to a language bug. Ling Feng spoke up in English decisively, "Excuse me, what happened?" Andrew said in broken Chinese, "You guys, fighting, amazing, we, want to learn, teach us." Ling Feng and Geng Liang understood clearly that yesterday morning, their sharpness was too exposed and they were being remembered by several Germans. Ling Feng hugged his arm and said, "Why should I teach you? What benefits do we have? When it comes to dealing with Germans, or more precisely, dealing with outsiders, it's still not possible to do things for nothing without money." Andrews looked at Judith and Nicholas, nodded at each other, and then said to Ling Feng, "My uncle is a shareholder of Krupp Company. As long as you teach us, I can give you weapons." Upon hearing about the weapons, Ling Feng and Geng Liang's eyes widened. For no other reason, they had not truly encountered the weapons of this time since modern times, and they seemed somewhat excited. Ling Feng. Oh. What weapon can you give me? Andrews dodged his eyes and said, ZB-26 light machine gun, yes. Ling Feng asked, just one shot. Andrews immediately shook his head and said, no, 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 the three of us, will give you 30 shots. Just as Ling Feng was about to agree, Gung Liang pushed him away and said, no way. We have Czech-style light machine guns in our country, so you don't need them. Ling Feng widened his eyes, what's going on? It sounds like a high.NZB, and the Type 26 light machine gun is actually a Czech light machine gun. Ling Feng's interest has increased. Episode 9. A good play, too. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Andrews couldn't help but look down and said, you can say what you want. Gung Liang, a fanatic who studies World War II weapons, spoke up. Bofors 40 anti-aircraft guns, 5 guns, plus 10 base shells, otherwise we won't talk about it. Cold Peak is completely confused, what? Gung Liang gave Ling Feng a look that looked at me, promising not to be at a disadvantage, and then stared coldly at Andrews. Andrews shook his head like a drum and said, no, 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 too much, too much. Gung Liang decisively slammed the door shut, and Ling Feng whispered to Gung Liang, what is this anti-aircraft gun for? Gung Liang. Anti-aircraft. Ling Feng gave Gung Liang a thumbs up and then touched him with his shoulder. May I take the liberty of asking you, how can you bring back so much? Even if you have the ability to bring it back, is it still ours? In one sentence, extinguish Gung Liang's small flame in an instant. Can you bring it back? Is it my own to take it back? Now that we don't even have our own troops, where can we take them back and put them? Besides, these wolves are all around. Can't you trust the officials of the Kuomintang to cheat? More precisely, it's a secondment, and I'll give you a white slip. When will it be returned? Ah bah, dream it, you. Bang bang bang, knocked on the door again, and Andrews didn't give up. Gung Liang opened the door, and Andrews said, it really doesn't work, but MG42 can, but we can only give you 15. Ling Feng and Gung Liang thought of the fact that even if they got it, they couldn't take it back, and their interest in bargaining with them declined. Gung Liang casually said, okay, but your German students can get an extra 2 cans every day, and then pouted. Andrews and the others immediately understood and reached out their hands, saying, deal. Gung Liang also reached out his hand, saying, deal. Subsequently, Andrews left the Chinese student dormitory building with Judith and Nicholas. 10 minutes later, Andrews arrived with 6 cans in his hand, yes, 6. What Gung Liang means is that you have 2 of them every day, just give me 1, and Andrews actually gave them all the shares of the day to Gung Liang. This doubled Gung Liang's liking for these rigid Germans, and he said to Ling Feng, come on, take it in, and teach them well in the future. In other words, the people here are stupid, they have a lot of money, come quickly. Ling Feng saw 6 cans at a glance and took them over with great disdain. He dared to teach the German fighting skills and replaced them with 6 cans. To be precise, only cans could fall into his hands. After collecting the cans, Andrews confidently asked, when can we be taught? Gung Liang raised his eyebrows and said, due to some special reasons, we can only teach you in the fighting class. Harman has already been defeated by us. I believe we can skip the fighting class. What about you? Udite said confidently, don't worry, Harman is my uncle, I will tell him. Ling Feng. Gung Liang. Uncle was beaten into a rabbit, how could the nephew learn to fight with the enemy who beat uncle? Who did the Germans learn from? Ling Feng said, we'll be gathering in 10 minutes. Would you go back first? Andrews nodded happily and said, okay, cold, brother. Then he waved his hand and left the Chinese student dormitory building with Judith and Nicholas. As soon as they left, Leng Feng touched his chin and looked at Gung Liang with a playful expression. Gung Liang closed the door, and when he saw Leng Feng's expression, he couldn't help but wonder, "What are you looking at me for? Or what do you want to say?" Leng Feng hugged his arm and said, "Do you think this Andrews has an unusual background?" Gung Liang said, "It's definitely not ordinary, but what kind of general method?" "Come on, big expert, I heard you also chose psychology and behavioral analysis. Come on, let's talk about it." Leng Feng pouted and extended a finger, saying, "First of all, this Yudite is Heyman's nephew." "What kind of person is Heyman?" "He is a fighting instructor in the SS, and his family background is also quite deep." "So?" "Stop, how do you know that the Heyman family has a deep background?" Gung Liang asked. Leng Feng explained, "As far as I know, Harman used to serve as an instructor at other military academies before we resumed enrollment at the Berlin Military Academy, and used the same elbow strike to kill 2 Italian students and 1 German student. This German student is a military officer in service, so according to Germany's strict military law, Harman will definitely be severely punished, but..." Gung Liang patted his hand and said, "But not only did Heyman not get punished, but he also entered the Berlin Military Academy as a combat instructor. So he must have a deep background, and this background is very likely to be family background." Leng Feng nodded and said, "You're not stupid yet, so let me continue. Don't interrupt me anymore, my focus is on Andrews." Gung Liang remained silent and made a gesture of invitation. Leng Feng said, "This Andrews has never asked Judith, who has a family background, for all his decisions. This indicates that Andrews has a much higher status than Judith, and that Judith can make decisions for Heyman. This indicates that Judith may be the head of the Heyman family, and Heyman may be a branch, which further highlights Andrews' status and is very noble." Gung Liang couldn't help but applaud and said, "Okay. That's right. But you've been reasoning for a while, can you tell me what you think? What exactly is Andrews' identity?" Leng Feng gave a real sneer and said, "I dare assert that there must be a Feng character in the full name of Andrews." Gung Liang looked bewildered and said, "What Feng? Isn't Feng a Chinese surname?" Leng Feng rolled his eyes and said, "Please, you have a thorough understanding of weapons research in various countries during World War II. Can you give me some insight? Names with the word Feng in them represent German nobility, even the royal family. The vast majority of Germany's military factories have shares in the nobility, which is quite significant." Gung Liang snapped his fingers and said, "I think we can make a bet. If Andrews really has the word Feng in his name, then I owe you. Well, I'll give you all 6 cans today. If you're wrong, these cans all belong to me." Leng Feng gave him a white glance and said, "This bet has no meaning. Even if we ask, they won't say it. German nobles are usually relatively low-key. Unless absolutely necessary, they refuse to admit it. In Germany, relying on aristocratic status to show off is shameful behavior." Gung Liang licked his lips and said, "Have you forgotten your map? Can you check a person's full name?" Cold Feng suddenly understood and said, "Then I think this bet can be a bit higher." Gung Liang said, "No drop. I'll bet you an expert that I won't push too much." Leng Feng said, "Okay, take a look at the answer." Then he took out the map and opened it. There were 3 moving footprints on the map. Leng Feng pointed to the first footprint and said, "This must be him." Then I clicked on it, only to find William von Nicholas. Both of them shouted out at the same time. Originally, Andrews was not the most noble, on the contrary, it was Nicholas who remained silent, who was the true aristocrat. Cold Feng was dumbfounded, Gung Liang was dumbfounded. Then, Gung Liang glanced at Cold Feng and said, "You're wrong." Leng Feng awkwardly blinked and said, "At least the nobles were right." Seeing Gung Liang's gaze, Leng Feng raised his hand and said, "All right, all the cans belong to you. Gung Liang smiled and put all the cans on his bedside table, proudly crossing his waist. Leng Feng said leisurely, anyway, I don't like to eat either. The pride on Gung Liang's face instantly faded, and then he decisively understood Cold Feng's words as an excuse to resolve awkwardness. Shoo shoo. The wake-up call sounded, and Leng Feng and Gung Liang naturally went to get their hats. When they saw that the familiar national emblem was not on their hats, their hands stopped for a moment. When Leng Feng and Gung Liang appeared first downstairs in the dormitory, Ebel and Bauer walked up to Leng Feng and Gung Liang and asked, 5 days later, this weekend, the great German SS and armored divisions will hold a tactical exercise in the 3rd conference hall next to the Empire State Building. Captain William specially invited you two to come and observe. Leng Feng. Mr. William. Who is that? Ebert. Commander of the 2nd Armored Division of the German Armed Forces. Without saying a word, Leng Feng said, we must be there. With only our eyes, not our mouth. Ebel shook his head and said, no, 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 you need to put your mouth on. The two of you recommended by Coach Coney, you two are very lucky, very lucky. Then he made an invisible bow, very small, but was caught by cold pique. Leng Feng said, we will definitely be there. Quickly, other Chinese students also arrived. Leng Feng and Gung Liang exchanged a glance, which was very obvious. The show had begun, right? As the captain, Leng Feng naturally said the first thing. Everyone study hard, forget about yesterday's incident, right? A student was very cooperative and said, Captain, how should we handle Du Jiao's matter? Gung Liang interjected, the matter will be handled by the chief of the military statistics office. I believe that if Du Jiao is innocent, he will not be wronged. Alright, this matter is not something we can handle. Just train well. Leng Feng. Did you understand what the deputy captain said? Ladies and gentlemen, I understand. This is just an opening statement, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of Leng Feng's mouth. The 10th episode is a great performance. 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the team arrived at the training ground, Leng Feng and Gung Liang handed over a team to Ebel to arrange for instructors and decisively stepped out. Heyman looked fierce yesterday, but today he has become a well-behaved bunny. Of course, his eyes are still red, so he is still a bunny. Seeing Harmon coming over, Leng Feng said calmly, where's Yudette? Let's call him out. Our patience is limited. Watching Heyman's veins bulging on his head, he clenched his fists tightly without making a sound and turned his head away, apparently going to notify Yudite. Seeing Cold Peak's performance, Ebel walked over and said, what's up? Leng Feng said, Andrews, Yudite, and Nicholas have hired me and Gung Liang as their individual combat coaches. Upon hearing the names of these 3 people, Ebel was stunned and quickly nodded, go. He didn't hesitate. Quickly, Andrews brought Judith and Nicholas to Leng Feng and Gung Liang. Leng Feng and Gung Liang exchanged a glance and took these 3 individuals alone to an unmanned training ground. Leng Feng said, time is limited, and we will have to change our study subjects in half a month. Therefore, we can only teach you as much as we can, learn as much as you can, during this half-month. Andrews translated Chinese into German and told Judith and Nicholas. Nicholas and the others nodded in agreement. Gung Liang turned his hand behind his back and said, since it's combat, there are 2 types. The first is to defeat the enemy, and the second is how to break free after being restrained. Leng Feng taught you how to defeat the enemy, while I, responsible for teaching you how to get out of trouble. Is there any problem? As he spoke, he glanced at Nicholas. After translation, Yudite and Nicholas understood. Leng Feng said, okay, for the first hour, I'll teach, and for the next hour, Instructor Gung will come. Then Leng Feng calmly called Nicholas over. In name, it was meant for Andrews to watch carefully and translate well, but in reality, it was Leng Feng and Gung Liang who had already started plotting against the nobleman Nicholas. You are all elite members of the German armed forces and even the SS, and you are proficient in basic combat skills. There is no need for me to explain further. So, let me talk about some unique techniques of China. China is a country famous for martial arts, and combat skills naturally incorporate elements of martial arts. As he spoke, Leng Feng began to point on Nicholas with his hand, saying, "The deadly acupoints that China values are an important part of its deadly skills, including the jade pillow, the human body, the mud ball, the sun, and the 4 major deadly acupoints." Whenever Leng Feng's hand touched Nicholas' body acupoints, Nicholas couldn't help but tremble. It can be seen that at that time, Chinese martial arts still had some shadows in their hearts. Leng Feng continued to explain, as a soldier, killing enemies on the battlefield is not a performance, and there is no need for fancy moves. As long as you can hit the enemy, you can do it. Therefore, during combat, the target is usually the crucial part. For example, when I face an enemy, the enemy punches me in the face with their right fist. Then Leng Feng held Nicholas' right hand. I can block my left arm from bottom to top, rotate my left forearm inward, use my left palm to counterattack and strike the enemy's neck on the right side. He said as he twisted Nicholas' arm and turned his left hand to strike Nicholas' neck. Of course, there was no force, it was just a demonstration. As a result, the enemy may feel dizzy and disoriented, and even have obstacles in their physical movements. In some cases, it can even cause death. Therefore, fighting is a killing technique, and if not used, one must use one move to win. Cold Feng explained a relatively simple technique for defeating the enemy. With just this move, Nicholas showed great interest and tried to interact with Judith and Andrews, but they didn't put in any effort, afraid that what Cold Peak said might even lead to death. The second point is very important. It is commonly used in German martial arts, the technique of locking the throat. Leng Feng said again. Nicholas walked up to Leng Feng very consciously as a demonstration. Leng Feng said, "For you, close combat, also known as hand-to-hand combat, is rare. Even if it does occur, it is empty-handed to empty-handed, or the stock to stock. Throat locking has become particularly important. Locking the enemy's throat from behind can not only control their behavior to a certain extent, but also make them lose their mobility due to lack of oxygen in the brain." Instructor Harmon's favorite technique is the arms throat locking technique, demonstrated by Leng Feng using Nicholas. Andrews raised his hand and said, "But, Leng, we saw it last time. You unlocked Harmon's throat locking technique, we need to learn." Leng Feng smiled and said, "Liberation and countermeasures are not my teaching content. Instructor Gung Liang will teach you later. But here, I want to teach you 2 additional throat locking techniques. One is single arm throat locking technique, and the other is double arm throat locking technique. The former is used to kill enemies, and the latter is used to subdue enemies." Cold Feng locked Nicholas' neck with his left elbow, and his right hand actually pressed against Nicholas' back. With a thrust, Nicholas immediately couldn't breathe. Leng Feng said, "Why is it said that one-handed throat locking is a technique for killing enemies? Because when one-handed throat locking is used, your right hand has room for movement. When capturing prisoners, your right hand can be used to cover the enemy's mouth to prevent noise." He covered Nicholas' mouth. The second is to have the enemy's back facing you, and you can use weapons to kill him, he said, with his right hand in the shape of a pistol, pressing against Nicholas' back. Wow, the wisdom of Chinese people. Yudite couldn't help but exclaim that Uncle Harmon's technique of relying on elbow strength to strangle and break the neck was not practical here in Cold Peak. "Release Nicholas," Leng Feng said. "The second technique is the double arm throat locking technique. Similarly, when one arm locks the enemy, if the enemy is as strong as Haman, your arm strength may not be his opponent, and it is easy to break it off." Nicholas gestured on the side, thinking that if Haman was strangled by himself, one hand would definitely break his own, so he nodded in agreement. Leng Feng said, so, the technique of locking the throat with both hands is very crucial. For example, with the left arm, lock the enemy's throat, extend the right arm inward from the wrist of the left arm, and at the same time, press the left hand firmly against the upper arm of the right arm, while the palm of the right arm presses the enemy's back forward in the opposite direction. He then used Niklaus as a demonstration. Andrews first exclaimed, "Oh my God! No matter how the enemy moves, there will be a force locking their throat. It will not only forcefully break the outer arm, but also push the other hand like a lever to press their own head with force, only allowing them to die faster." Nicholas, who was being demonstrated, blushed and nodded in agreement. He also tried front, back, left, and back, but there was no possibility of escaping. He could only die faster if he stayed there. Udite and Andrews only have one idea in their hearts. If that's the case, even if it's 5 anti-aircraft guns, it's still worth it. Just as several Germans were practicing enthusiastically, they walked over. Upon seeing it, Leng Feng saw several Chinese students. Leng Feng asked one of them, "Tang Fei, how did you come?" Tang Fei and Tang Ku, two brothers who were said to have a good relationship with Beijing and performed well, were sent to Germany for further education. Tang Fei said, "Captain, Lao Lu thinks that Du Jiao is at least our brother and wants to help him. You and the team deputy are also students of Director Zheng. We hope you two can go talk to Du Jiao about your relationship." The person next to him, who looked obviously unkind, named Lu Jie, looked over with Cold Feng's eyes. Lu Jie looked at Cold Feng innocently, while Gung Liang shook his head and said to himself, "Tang Fei is really a sincere child. I don't even know if he's being used as a gun." Leng Feng sneered and said, "What? Are you guys planning to go back to your country? You dare to talk too much about the Communist Party. I think you all forgot how the principal instructed us to wait when we left China and came to Germany. How could you act impulsively at this critical moment? We are all elites of the party and the country, and we must prevent the infiltration of communist elements. For now, let's not say we won't intercede. If Du Jiao is really a Communist Party member, we should first draw a clear line with him." Gung Liang said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe everyone is aware of the situation in China. Captain Lang and I are not unfriendly either. We have already said what we should say. If anyone tries to persuade our brothers to intercede for a Communist Party member, don't blame us for turning against each other." Seeing the attitude of Leng Feng and Gung Liang, Lu Jie couldn't help but show a meaningful smile, while Tang Fei and Tang Ku looked at Leng Feng with great disappointment, turning around and leaving dejected. The theater-goers are gone. Gung Liang touches Leng Feng and Leng Feng nods Gung Liang. "What are your thoughts?" Leng Feng said, "It's useless to have any ideas. Anyway, as long as he sees them, his master will also see them. The key now is how to give Du Jiao a message and tell him to resist more. If he continues to sell cute costumes as a pity, it will be perfect." Gung Liang looked at Leng Feng and waved his hand repeatedly, "No, no, 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 I haven't seen him before. My brain has no signal." Leng Feng said, "It seems that we really need to investigate the military statistics department at night.